2 Samuel chapter 4 is a chapter where political collapse turns into murder, and murder turns into judgment. The house of Saul is already weakening after Abner's death, and Ishbosheth is left exposed and fearful. The text says that his courage fails, and the whole nation is troubled. That line sets the mood for the chapter. The kingdom is unstable, and the old order is falling apart. Into that weakness step two men, Baanah and Rechab, who lead raiding bands under Ishbosheth. They do not bring loyalty or protection, they bring treachery. They wait until the heat of the day, when the king is resting, and enter his house under the pretense of getting wheat, while he lies vulnerable in his bed. They strike him down and cut off his head. This is not battlefield death. It is calculated betrayal in a private place of trust. The chapter pauses briefly to mention Mephibosheth, Jonathan's son, who had become lame as a child. That detail seems small, but it matters deeply. Even in the collapse of Saul's house, God is preserving a future line of covenant mercy. The kingdom's story is not only about the fall of the old ruler, it is also about who will be remembered, protected, and restored in the chapters ahead. Baanah and Rechab then carry Ishbosheth's head to David, expecting reward. They speak as though they have delivered David from an enemy and secured their own future. But they misunderstand David. Completely, David does not want a throne gained through blood guilt. He remembers the Amalekite who claimed to have killed Saul, and he recalls that the man was executed for bringing death to the Lord's anointed. David uses that precedent here as well. If he rejected a lie about killing Saul, he will certainly reject the real murder of Saul's son. David's response is one of moral clarity. He orders Baanah and Rechab put to death. Their hands and feet are cut off, and their bodies are hung beside the pool in Hebron as a public warning. David is not acting out of cruelty, but out of justice and refusal to let treachery build his kingdom. He then has Ishbosheth's head buried in Abner's tomb, giving the dead man dignity in death, even though he had lived in a divided and fragile kingdom. This chapter teaches that violence done for advantage is still evil, even when it is presented as service. It also shows that David's kingship is being established on a different moral foundation from the kind of power grabs common in the ancient world. He will not climb by stepping on corpses. He will not accept blood as a gift. He is still a king who fears God enough to refuse a shortcut. At the same time, the chapter is not merely about David's virtue. It is also about the collapse of a house that could not stand. Ishbosheth is powerless, Abner is gone, and Saul's line is crumbling under the weight of its own instability. The tragedy is not just that he dies. It is that no one around him is faithful enough to protect him. The chapter shows how fragile a kingdom becomes when it is no longer held together by righteousness. 2 Samuel chapter 4 leaves us with a sobering picture. A weak king murdered in his sleep, opportunists trying to profit from the crime, and David refusing to let wickedness define his rise. The Lord is still moving history toward David's throne, but he does not need betrayal to accomplish it. The chapter ends with justice, burial, and the quiet testimony that God's king must not be built by murder.